Tonight, a crime that shattered a family. Lindsay Clancy accused of planning to kill her 3 children in January 2023 before attempting to take her own life. But was it cold-blooded murder or postpartum psychosis that left her incapable of telling right from wrong?
This was not a woman in the throes of psychosis on January 24th, 2023. This was a woman who acted intentionally, rationally, and swiftly to accomplish a very specific goal: to kill.
What was happening inside Lindsay Clancy's mind the night she killed her children? That decision now rests in the hands of a Massachusetts jury. Tonight, as deliberations continue, we take you inside the case, the testimony, the evidence, and the questions that could determine Lindsay Clancy's fate. Good evening, I'm Stephen Romo. The fate of a Massachusetts mother accused of murdering her 3 small children is now in the hands of a jury. Lindsay Clancy could spend the rest of her life in prison if a jury finds her to be criminally responsible for killing her kids and not incapacitated by mental illness at the time. Those children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan. Her defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, says his client was over-medicated and not getting the proper treatment as she was suffering from postpartum psychosis. He slammed the medical care she got, calling it lousy, and criticized the providers for not knowing what they were doing.
My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it.
Prosecutors told the jury that there's no disputing that Lindsay Clancy was suffering, but that she knowingly made the decision to kill her children.
She could have killed herself and left her kids alive, but it was a choice to take them with her.
We've got our legal analysts here to break down how it played out in court today. With us, Misty Maris and Danny Savalos. Thank you both for being here. A lot of testimony. A lot of expert testimony as well. Danny, let's start with you. So the defense here mounting basically what we commonly know as an insanity defense. And these cases that typically would mean that the burden shifts to the defense to prove that not the case here in Massachusetts. Why is that significant?
It's very significant because it's probably the strongest point in the defense's favor, in my view, because most jurisdictions that have an insanity defense, it's an affirmative defense. And usually the burden is on the defendant to prove something. And you may think, burden, what does that have to do with anything? The burden is everything in criminal defense, in criminal prosecution. Because if the prosecution has the burden to disprove insanity, and I'll call it insanity, Stephen, because in Massachusetts they call it lack of criminal responsibility, but we're all familiar with the insanity defense. But in this jurisdiction, it is the government, the Commonwealth, that has to disprove insanity and disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt to the highest level, in addition to proving all the other elements of their case. So that is probably the defense's best tool here, that and putting the healthcare system on trial, pointing to all the people that they say failed Lindsay Clancy, because this is a jury that has sat through some horrific testimony. Some of them are probably looking for someone to blame, and the defense is trying to give them a name, and it's not Lindsay Clancy, it's her providers.
It's something we heard time and again from the defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, about the medical care she received, and we also heard from prosecutors saying that this is not putting the mental health care system in the United States on trial. A big disagreement they had there. And Misty, on that point, when we heard from prosecutors in opening statements, seemed to shift a bit when we heard their closing arguments. Let's take a quick listen.
Ultimately, on January 24th, 2023, the defendant made a calculated decision. This was a woman who no longer liked the life she thought she wanted. It was getting harder and harder to control. And when she saw the opportunity to escape, she made the selfish choice to take it.
That was almost 5 weeks ago. Feels a bit farther ago than that, but they shifted their statements here for their closing arguments. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, so in the opening, the prosecutors came out with that motive. She no longer liked the life she thought she wanted. They said that she's going to look like a doting mother and a dedicated nurse, but behind the scenes, jury, you're going to see she's manipulative, she's controlling. And when she lost control, that's when she decided to take her life and take the life of her kids. Well, that fell flat, Stephen, as the evidence came out in court specifically specifically with witnesses who were testifying for the prosecution, people in Lindsay Clancy's life, her nanny, father-in-law, said she's not a controlling person. There was nothing unusual about the way that she was caring for her kids. And in fact, she was a loving and doting mother. So we saw this major shift today in closing arguments with regard to motive, which prosecutors don't even have to prove. But when you've got the defense telling this compelling narrative that Danny laid out, they want to have a counter story. And and what they said today is that Lindsay Clancy was depressed, that she was suffering from mental illness, and she got to the point where she wanted to give up. And the only thing in her way was leaving the children behind, so she took them with her too. So that's a bit of a shift in the why that the prosecutors have presented to the jury.
In the eyes of a jury, do you think if they notice that shift from opening to closing, does that hurt the credibility of the prosecution?
Yes, and I think that's why you have Kevin Reddington, the defense attorney, focusing on that, not letting the jury forget for 1 second what prosecutors did lay out in those opening statements. We also saw Kevin Reddington reading portions of the opening statements to one of the prosecution's experts. And the expert had to say, what you've read is not in line with what I experienced when I was doing my evaluation. So that was really, really significant for the defense. And by the way, in a case like this, more than anything, the jury wants to know the why. This is a horrific case. So they're listening, and they're going to remember what was told to them at the outset.
Definitely paying attention. And on the topic of the jury, we got their instructions today. Lindsay Clancy was charged with first-degree murder, 3 counts, but now they could also, second-degree murder is on the table, as well as manslaughter. What effect do you think that has on the jury?
I have to tell you, Stephen, this is one of the most nail-biting decisions for a defense attorney to make, whether or not to request a lesser-included offense, because it goes to the heart of how you feel you did in this case. And by the way, how an attorney often feels at the end of the trial often has nothing to do with what the jury's thinking, because all you have to do is talk to a jury after a trial and you find out, oh my gosh, I couldn't have been more off about who was on my side, about who was against us. It just goes to show that if you are at the end of the trial and you think, oh, this is not going well, they're going to convict her of murder, then maybe you do want a lesser included offense so the jury can hang their hat on something. But on the other hand, if you think you have killed it on defense, you've done a great job and you're riding towards an acquittal, then you want to put it to that jury, all or nothing. You have one choice. Either they prove the highest crime in our legal system or you acquit and we're out of here.
Wow, yeah. Super difficult to choose as a defense attorney. Of course, we'll soon see how that plays out. We'll have much more from you both coming up in just a moment. But next, this trial has been marked by a significant number of moments inside the courtroom, from that emotional testimony to critical evidence presented by both sides. As jurors deliberate, let's take a look back at some of the key testimony that has shaped this case.
Evidence of trauma to her neck.
In a Massachusetts courtroom, the trial of Lindsay Clancy exposed the depths and consequences of a mother's depression and possible psychosis.
He screamed she killed the kids.
Clancy admits to strangling her children, but what was going on in her mind at the time is the question on trial. For prosecutor Shannon Buckingham, the facts point to murder.
This was not a woman in the throes of psychosis on January 24th, 2023. This was a woman who acted intentionally, rationally, and swiftly to accomplish a very specific goal: to kill.
But for Clancy's defense team and hundreds of supporters who've shown up outside the courthouse, it was a tragedy caused by postpartum psychosis and over-medication by doctors. They say she was following urgent commands by a voice in her head.
This is a woman that was suffering from psychosis at the time that she went down to that basement. She had no motive. She loved her children.
In the opening days of the trial, prosecutors established a timeline. They argued that Clancy sent her then-husband Patrick on a series of errands to CVS and to pick up dinner at an out-of-the-way spot to give herself a window of time to do the unthinkable. When Patrick got home, the house was quiet. And when he entered the locked bedroom,
I just saw blood everywhere, and the window was open.
Lindsay had cut herself and jumped from the second-story window. She was badly injured, but still alive.
I said, "What happened?"
And what was her response?
She said, "I tried to kill myself."
Did you ask her anything else?
I said, "Where are the kids?"
And what was her response?
She said, "They're in the basement."
The 3 children were in the basement, strangled by their mother using exercise bands. Later, from the hospital, Lindsay would tell Patrick that a voice commanded her to kill them.
She said she heard a man's voice telling her that if she didn't do it now, she would lose her chance or something like that.
And did she also tell you that she had had a moment of psychosis?
I don't recall.
The prosecution would call more than 70 witnesses, attempting to prove that Clancy knew exactly what she was doing and was in full control of her actions.
Thank you, sir. You may be seated.
Did the defendant tell you if the voice told her where to kill the children?
No.
Did the voice tell her in what way to kill herself?
No.
The fact that the voice, according to the defendant, the voice didn't tell her any of those things, but instead just said, kill the kids so you can kill yourself. Is that significant in your evaluation in any way?
Yes.
Prosecutors pointed to her diary where Clancy wrote, "I'm so desperate to get a mental break from taking care of everyone that my mind is trying to make something physically wrong with me." She also describes herself as sleep deprived and paranoid. But many of the prosecution's own witnesses said Lindsay was a good mom.
I observed a wonderful mom who loved her kids.
For the defense, Lindsay's mom and sister were the first to testify.
I loved my grandchildren with all my heart. And you never know what it's like to love a grandchild until you become a grandmother. And it was the most beautiful thing.
They described how Lindsay's mental health was spiraling out of control and that she was anxious and paranoid, desperate for help. A series of doctors prescribed her as many as 13 medications, ranging from Ativan to Xanax.
Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had horrible insomnia all night, and I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day.
Then it was the defense experts who laid out how they believe Lindsay's psychosis drove her to kill the children.
At the time of the crime itself, on January 24, 2023, Ms. Clancy was frankly psychotic. So in that sense, she had a postpartum psychosis.
Dr. Philip Resnick has testified as a witness for other high-profile defendants like Jeffrey Dahmer and Andrea Yates, the Houston mom who drowned her 5 children in a bathtub. Dr. Resnick testified that Lindsay Clancy had multiple delusions that day, including hearing a voice that commanded her to kill her children.
Not only did she hear a command, but she felt that her body was taken over by an external force where she was in a dream state and did not have control of her own body. It's almost like she was a puppet and someone else was pulling the string.
And after 22 days of trial, dozens of witnesses, and hours of emotional testimony, the jury heard closing arguments.
Calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you. Calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it.
The issue is whether, at the time she killed Cora, Dawson, and Callan, she knew the difference between right and wrong, and whether she could conform her behavior to the requirements of the law.
And now, Lindsay Clancy's future is in the jury's hands. Certainly a lot has happened over the course of the past almost 5 weeks. And there was another big courtroom clash that got a lot of attention, and it was religion that became a flashpoint. Twice during the prosecution questioning, the term mortal sin came up. It's a concept in the Catholic faith that clearly struck a nerve with the judge. He told jurors to disregard the comments, but it led to a pretty stunning request from the defense. Let's take a look.
Now, are you an active member in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
Okay. So you're aware that murder is considered a mortal sin?
Counsel, could I see you over here?
That was part of her expectation, that she and the children would be together in heaven with God. She was raised as a Catholic, and this, as I understand, Catholic considerations, that's not necessarily what happens, but when I asked her about that, when I said, isn't suicide a mortal sin?
Yeah, can I see counsel over here?
I have to move for a mistrial, reluctantly. The reason is that this is intentional misconduct on the part of the prosecution. You know that this whole idea of injecting Roman Catholic faith, the concept of mortal sin, into this trial occurred, I don't even remember now, about a week ago, and I objected, but before I could get the objection out, Your Honor had us at the sidebar at the same time, and very forcefully, in my opinion, indicated to the jurors that they should not consider that to any degree.
The question I asked the witness did not ask for any testimony about religion, about Catholicism, about mortal sins, or anything like that. And the slide is still up on the screen. There's nothing on the slide about Catholicism, about mortal sins, about any of that. The witness was explaining his reasoning. I don't think it was intentional on part of the witness either. If we look at his interview of Ms. Clancy, one of the things that this witness has to do is determine whether the defendant knew the wrongfulness of her conduct. And that can be either that it was criminally wrong or morally wrong.
In regards to it said, go to God, baby, go to God. That was statements that had been made in evidence already. And then he indicated that was part of her expectation, that she and the children would be together in heaven with God. All right. Now we're getting a little closer to problematic area. Then he testified she was raised as a Catholic. And as I understand Catholic considerations, that's not necessarily what happens. How is any of that proper at this point?
The judge clearly unhappy about that. Let's bring in our legal analysts, Misty Maris and Danny Savalos. So, Misty, obviously the judge denied this request for a mistrial, but why was it such a big deal to bring up religion in the first place?
Yeah, the judge denied it, and I think the defense probably wanted it to be denied, but needed to preserve the record. It's a big deal because it's against the rules. So it came up first through the prosecutor asking questions to Susan Clancy, that's Patrick Clancy's mother. And the question was, you're a Catholic. Are you aware that murder is a mortal sin? Well, you can't ask questions to a witness about religion for the purposes of deeming them to be credible. And so that was very objectively against the rules, which begs the question, why did the prosecutors do it? I would imagine they know that rule. Maybe they wanted the jury to hear it. Then it comes up later through an expert where it wasn't solicited, that's the prosecutor's argument, but the expert goes in and mirrors that exact same language of mortal sin. So I understand why the defense would be jumping up and down and making that motion for a mistrial. Ultimately, I think they'd rather go through with the case, but you have to preserve that record.
Yeah, it was actually stunning to hear the term mortal sin used again. Danny, what do you think about this? The prosecutor originally asked that question to Patrick Clancy's mother. Do you think that they were doing that intentionally? Do they have some kind of strategy there?
It's hard. I don't want to disparage the prosecution and say they were trying to be sneaky and get something in, but the reality is, at trial, it's an ugly business. And if you can get an edge, and if they think they can maybe get in some evidence that might otherwise not be allowed in, look, we all do what we can within the rules to win the case. And sometimes when you're locked into a trial, Misty, I know you know what I'm talking about, you get into it and you just get single-minded and you think, maybe I'll walk that line. I know the line I'm not supposed to cross, but I'll skirt close to it. And sometimes you get too close. Sometimes you get too close to the fire and you get burned. So they may have hoped that they would get that in, but they probably shouldn't have brought it in.
Well, you know, you can't unring the bell, right?
Right,
so maybe
exactly.
You want the jury to hear it. You know it's probably going to get stricken. You know the jury is probably going to be told that they can't consider it, but it's out there.
Yeah, it's hard to erase that from your mind. Danny, if there is a conviction for first-degree murder, let's say, is this grounds for an appeal?
If there's a conviction, appeal is automatic. I mean, if you go to trial and you're convicted, you're appealing. I mean, after all, you went to trial because you believe you're not guilty. So appeal is essentially automatic. The difference in punishment is pretty dramatic, not so much between murder, but manslaughter, in theory, she could get out someday. The murder charges carry life, either without parole or with the possibility of parole. So, I mean, look, those are appealable issues. Certainly, if she's convicted, you can expect the religion issue will come up. But when it comes to evidentiary issues, whether something went in or didn't go into the trial, that's the kind of thing that's usually committed to the sound discretion of the trial judge. But look, you get some fresh eyes on appeal and you might have a shot. But here's the thing. You don't want to plan. You want to make your record, but you don't want to plan for appeal. It's not a de novo, fresh look at everything. The standard on appeal is very difficult for criminal defendants. So you want to win your case, you want to win it at trial, not on appeal.
Yeah, a lot of steps to go before and if we got to that point. Thank you both. We'll check back in just a bit. Until then, let's go inside that courtroom where jurors at times have had to sit through some really graphic and difficult testimony. Some moved to tears multiple times over the course of this trial. You see Lindsay Clancy getting emotional in court today as her defense attorney laid out the closing arguments. And behind her in that courtroom, a packed room full of spectators, media, and some supporters, every seat taken, including Lindsay Clancy's parents there. Lindsay's mother wearing a striped black and white shirt, her father there next to her in that yellow shirt. Outside court, a long line that went all the way to the parking lot of people trying to get into the trial that so much of the country has been talking about for weeks now. NBC Boston's Sue O'Connell has been following this trial for us from inside the courtroom for the last 5 weeks now. Sue, thanks so much for joining us. So set the scene for us today. For much of the trial, Clancy remained fairly stoic, but also at times she did get emotional, particularly during that evidence, that autopsy evidence about her children. What can you tell us about her demeanor in court throughout this trial?
Well, it's always been triggered about the conversations about the children, about Callan, about Corey, about Dawson, whether it's about a happy story about them or if it is detailing how she killed them, how she strangled them, or the horrific evidence of the autopsy photos. And it's a real interesting change because she's very stoic, she's very quiet. And even today, when we were hearing closing arguments and her attorney, Kevin Reddington, was talking about the exercise bans, and then the assistant district attorney, Jennifer Sprague, got up and she talked about the exercise bans. And you could see Lindsay just kind of double over and her shoulders shaking and crying. And at times the sobbing has been overwhelming. After the autopsy evidence of the children was presented the second time for the other two children, she had to be taken out of the room and the judge called a recess. So the agony that she is going through, whether you believe she's guilty or not guilty, is real. And it really does fill the courtroom with the grief that's there for everybody. It's a very, very sad and tragic case that we're following here. And it's the horror of it is never more than a couple of steps away for us.
Certainly. What a good way to put it. And you just can't help but feel for the jurors who now have to sift back through that evidence that's there in the room in front of them. There was one particular day that was really striking early on in the trial when the 911 call that Patrick Clancy made on the day that he found the children. Can you talk to us about the impact that you saw on the jurors as they played that 911 call?
Yeah, and I'll set it up for you. We had heard testimony from Patrick Clancy. We had heard from first responders. And the thing about this 911 call, it's about 7 minutes long, and it's not being played. The judge has an order for it. So only those people who were in the room, myself included, heard it. And, there's something very powerful and intimate about just hearing audio and not seeing pictures, because it really puts you in Patrick Clancy's shoes as he arrives, as he tends to his wife who is on the ground. There's chaos trying to get to the dispatcher. The dispatcher settles him, tells him what to do. And then as he walks through the house for 2 minutes, finding his children, 2 of them dying, 1 of them already dead, and the horrific primal grief screams that come out of him are something I'm never going to forget. And watching the jurors endure this, which is sort of what they've been doing, is enduring this horrendous evidence, because unlike, reading a report or hearing a first responder or even hearing Patrick Clancy himself or seeing the pictures of the scene, actually being there, understanding the horror that he's going to find as he walks through the house, it had an impact on everybody, including seasoned reporters, more seasoned than I, people who work in the court. It was really something that I don't think anyone will forget. And I think we always have to remember that the jurors they're volunteered to be here, and they're doing the government's work and our work for the justice system. I get paid to be there, but they don't. So they're really the heroes in a lot of this story around the court case.
Certainly do not envy them. Sue O'Connell, thank you so much for your time tonight. Well, there's lots more coming up this hour. Up next, taking a closer look at testimony from family members of Lindsay and Patrick Clancy, including Patrick's own time on the stand when he recounted finding the bodies of his 3 young children. And if you or someone you know needs postpartum support, you can call the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline at 1-833-TLC-MAMA or visit postpartum.net. Welcome back. Throughout this trial, we've heard from more than 80 witnesses and experts, and there was a lot of emotional testimony as well, including hearing from those who were closest to Lindsay Clancy. The prosecution's very first witness was Patrick Clancy, who described that night he walked into his home back in January of 2023 and found those children. Then came testimony from Clancy's family and friends, many of whom were called by prosecutors, where they ended up painting a picture of Lindsay as a loving mother. Here's a look at some of the emotional testimony.
She was very nurturing, very loving. She was a wonderful mother, wonderful. She was begging for help. She loved her children, all of them, very, very much. Lindsay was struggling. We were all very concerned.
Her mood was worsening, as she described as depression. She was having more suicidal thoughts. Insomnia continued to be an issue.
Did you have the occasion to observe her interacting with the children?
I did.
And did you have any concerns about her interacting with the children?
None at all. She was a wonderful mom.
And what did she tell you about her issues?
She shared with me that she was suffering from postpartum.
Now, when she shared this information with you, had you noticed anything different about her demeanor or her presentation around the house?
I didn't at all.
Do you have an opinion as to how Lindsay was as a mother that you could see?
She was very, very good. She fed them great. She did a lot of things with them. They did like the all-American family.
She would mention that this wasn't her mind. She would say to me, this isn't me. I've never been like this before. And I would agree because she wasn't. I remember her saying, I just have to tell you guys something. And then she told us.
What did she tell you?
She told us that she had thoughts of harming the children.
And when you realized it was really quiet, what did you do?
I called out.
And who did you call out to?
Everyone.
Did anyone answer?
No.
And what did you see when you opened the door and went in?
I just saw blood everywhere, and the window is open.
Did anyone ever tell you not to leave your kids alone with Lindsay?
No.
In January of 2023, did Lindsay ever tell you that she wanted to harm your children? Did she ever tell you she was going to kill your children?
No. She said she heard a man's voice telling her that if she didn't do it now, she would lose her chance or something like that.
And did she also tell you that she had had a moment of psychosis?
I don't recall.
All right, let's bring back in our legal analysts, Misty Maris and Danny Savalos. So, Misty, how important was it for the defense to have these family members on the stand talking about how Lindsay was struggling in the days and weeks leading up to the killing?
It was really important. In many instances, these were prosecution witnesses that the defense was able to, on cross-examination, almost present them like they were character witnesses for Lindsay Clancy. And it was a central part of the defense theme that she, by all accounts, was a wonderful mother, cared about her kids, but then she had significant issues with postpartum depression, mental illness that ultimately resulted in psychosis. So getting that narrative out, because Lindsay Clancy was never taking the stand, super unlikely, even from the beginning of this trial. But the defense was able to get her story out through these family members and friends and get that information to the jury and present its narrative.
And they certainly did. Danny, we heard from a remarkable number of family members from this trial and people who knew Lindsay well before these killings took place. How important was that for the prosecution in many instances to bring these witnesses to the stand, especially if they're saying positive things about Lindsay. Was that a mistake for them to bring these witnesses, or was it necessary?
No, it may feel incongruent because the prosecution's calling witnesses that are essentially testifying to good character, and character is not normally something that comes into a criminal trial. But the reason they call these people is to show that the key for them is to show that Lindsay Clancy was not suffering under the legal definition of insanity. Here's the key. She can have mental illness. She can have mental defects. The key is that those mental illness or defects must be the cause of her inability to substantially appreciate either what she was doing was wrong or to conform her conduct to the law. That's why you bring that in. You show that some of the symptoms may not match up with the psychosis that the defense is trying to advance. You try to create the specter of her either exaggerating her symptoms or maybe even, God forbid, malingering or making them up. That is why you call different family members to say, oh, no, she was a good mom. She did a great job as a mother. She took care of the kids. That is the prosecution's plan there. And look, we can second guess it now, but they had to hammer all of this home. They have a tremendous burden to overcome in insanity, in disproving insanity, and they had to put on the evidence, even if it had good and bad for the prosecution.
And Misty, talking about Patrick's testimony, the first witness called to the stand, really establishing that timeline. How important was that? We heard more about the timeline in closings today, but Patrick really started that off.
Yeah, that's actually a really important piece of the prosecution's case. And I would say the most important and most impactful is that this all happens within a really, really short period of time. And that came out through Patrick's testimony. Also, what came out was the horrific nature of the crime scene, what he walked into on that day. All of that is what prosecutors argue that Lindsay Clancy was in a position where she was in control of what she was doing. Not only was she in control, she was making really specific decisions and many decisions in order to kill all three kids within this really, really short period of time. So all of that really central to the prosecution's case. And to Danny's point, all the evidence is being framed in different ways by both sides. So it really, it cuts both ways in certain aspects, but both sides needed to get those pieces of the puzzle out to the jury in order to establish their case.
One of the most bizarre things about this, so much of the facts are agreed upon by both sides. It's really trying to get into what was going on in Lindsay's mind at the time seems impossible. Danny, one of the witnesses that I was really fascinated by, Elaine Rossi, the nanny who worked for the family during a brief period of time. During opening statements, prosecution really presented Lindsay as overly controlling, and they called her manipulative. But this nanny who worked for them said that all of the stuff she asked to do with the kids, their tight schedule and their cutting up the food, seemed very normal. How important do you think that ended up being for the defense?
Well, it's hard to say. You add for the defense, but I can't stress enough Misty's point that there's so much evidence in this case that can go both ways. And the good mother evidence is something that's equally good and bad for the defense when you think about it, because if she's such a good mother, so locked on, then it's less likely that she was really suffering from this psychosis. What's good for the prosecution is to show that this was a mother who was under the normal stresses of motherhood, of parenthood, of taking care of kids, that she did, just because she has depression, that does not lead to an insanity finding. So the key for the prosecution is the good mother evidence is good because it shows that she was rational, but then it might be bad for the prosecution because it makes her more sympathetic. It makes the jury possibly think, well, if she was such a good parent, she had to be insane. Why else would she have done this? And by the way, I hear this a lot, that the horror of the underlying facts themselves have a lot of people thinking, well, that alone tends to show insanity. And that's not really how insanity works. But even the horror, which is otherwise bad for the defense, is in a way good for the defense because it shows that who else would do this but someone who is truly legally insane.
Seems like it makes it really hard to predict what those jurors are going to walk out of that room and decide. Yes. Thank you both. We'll check back in a bit. And coming up, there's the trial that's happening inside the courtroom, of course, and then there's a trial in the court of public opinion. A look at how Lindsay Clancy's trial has captivated people online. And if you or someone you know needs help, there are resources. You can reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can call or text 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. We'll be back. Welcome back. Before the break, we heard testimony from members of Lindsay Clancy's family. But what about the takes of total strangers? Another important part of this case has been the unfolding far beyond the courtroom in the court of public opinion. For years, social media and specifically TikTok has amplified theories and allowed millions of people to debate a case long before the jury is ever seated. Take a listen to what some folks had to say online.
All I want to be is a fly on the sidebar, because the way Judge Sullivan, is that his name, was so hot about the prosecution's witness talking about Catholicism and what happens, with mortal sin. He was so mad. And then we go on this long pause and we come back and Kevin Reddington asks for a mistrial. That is how big of a deal that is.
Day 14 ended. The Commonwealth has rested. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Let me hear them. I part of me wants to go live just so we can chat about it, but I want to know. What are you thinking?
My biggest issue with all of these conspiracy theories surrounding the Lindsay Clancy trial is that in trying to support her and defend her, you're actually taking away from the important issue at hand here. The real issue at hand here is women's mental health, specifically postpartum, not being taken seriously enough. And with all of these crazy conspiracy theories saying that she's not actually the one that did it, you're focusing on the wrong thing. She did do it. She did do it. That's not up for debate. You are not better detectives than the people who investigated this case 3 years ago. You are not. Anything you think that you are uncovering the truth, they've already seen it. They've already looked into it.
All right, let's bring back Misty Maris and Danny Savalas to talk more about the impact of this online discourse. So, Misty, as this case unfolds, you don't know all the facts that are going to be presented, but people on social media are more than happy to fill in those gaps. How do you think that it has affected this case? We saw all the people who gathered outside to show support and to show support for the children. Do you think that's had an impact?
So it shouldn't have an impact, and that's because the jury is not supposed to be consuming any social media, watching the news, or looking at anything about this case, or even talking about it. That being said, you know that the judge is aware and the parties are aware that this case has so many eyes on it. It's being talked about everywhere. It's going to be hard to avoid. And that's why you see the judge coming in every day before court begins and when court ends to remind their jury of the obligation to not consume, to not look at anything except the evidence that comes out in the courtroom. It's the best you can do with a high-profile case like this.
And Danny, what's your take on this? This jury was not sequestered, so they can have their phones, they can go home. I feel like this case was everywhere on TikTok, social media, TV. If they can't or can avoid it, what do they end up doing? Do you really believe the jury didn't hear or see anything about this case?
No, none of us do. I mean, you can't help it, especially in today's era. Look, 30 years ago, in the era of the OJ trial, you had to read a newspaper or turn on the TV. You can't avoid information or news about a high-profile case, especially like this one. And, Misty and I have been talking about it. This case is all over social media. And I got to tell you, if my personal group text messages with friends who have been interested by this case is any indicator, we are in a country divided. In fact, I am in a house divided. My wife and I have bitter disagreements about how this case is going in. And what you find, and Misty, I don't know if this is your experience, people are either on one side or the other. There are folks who believe that the defendant, they are sympathetic to her and they think she should not be convicted. And there are other folks that say they should throw the book at her. And you really don't have a lot of gray area. You don't have people in the middle. This is a polarizing case. And I have to suspect this is why I think we might get a quick jury verdict, because there may be, if the jury's anything like America, I think a lot of them have made up their minds by the time they walked into that room. And now all that is left to be done is to argue and horse trade and get people over to one side or the other.
I keep thinking about the phrase that I hear about how this may have been decided in jury selection. Do you think that could be true for this trial?
People say that all the time. I'm not a huge believer that a case is decided in jury selection, because I think jury selection is essentially astrology. It's feeling the top of your head for bumps and figuring out what kind of illnesses you have. That's a science that went away hundreds of years ago. The bottom line is what you find, and Misty, I don't know if this is your experience, if you have the courage to talk to jurors after a trial, you find that all of your your preconceptions, all of your biases were completely off. The person you thought was totally on your side was nowhere close to being on your side. And the person who you thought was totally against you was actually riding along. I'll say this, that yes, cases are won or lost in jury selection, but the attorneys don't know that that's what's happening when it's happening.
Interesting. And Misty, obviously, so many people talking about this online, hard to avoid. Sequestering the jury, that it happens sometimes. What is the bar really high to get that?
Yeah, so Stephen, there's a reality, as Danny said, with cases like this and the level of attention and the media and all of the people that are talking about it, and you can't touch your phone without something popping up. But that being said, there is an argument, and oftentimes it's the defense that will make the argument to let the jurors go home. Because if they're sequestered, they can't go home. They can't go back to their family. They can't go back to their children. Maybe they're going to rush, and they're just going to come to an agreement and just get it done because they want to go back and live their life. So it's a really extreme measure to be taken because of the potential issues that come with it.
Yeah, they're humans, and wanting to rush through it, yeah, that would make total sense. Danny Ceballos, Misty Maris, thank you so much for your expertise. Invaluable. We appreciate it. Well, coming up, over the course of the trial, different medical experts testified if they believe Lindsay Clancy suffered from postpartum psychosis, with really differing opinions on that. We'll be digging into that testimony ahead. And if you or someone you know needs postpartum support, you can call the National Mental Health Hotline at 1-833-TLC-MAMA or visit postpartum.net. We'll be back. Welcome back. Over the course of this trial, we have heard from numerous healthcare providers describing Clancy's mental state and if, in fact, she was experiencing psychosis or heard that commanding voice in her head. And then there's the issue of medications. Take a look at the many medications that were prescribed to Lindsay Clancy, at least 13 with various dosages. Here's a look back at the key medical information jurors are now considering as they deliberate.
Did what was reported to you rise to the level of diagnostic criteria for bipolar disorder?
Not at that time.
What is Dr. Resnick's opinion, sir, to your understanding?
In terms of the diagnosis?
Yeah.
Bipolar type 2.
How about Meg Spinelli? Do you know what her diagnosis was, sir?
I believe it was bipolar type 1.
My opinion is that she did have indeed a mental disease or a defect. That's a legal construct, not a DSM-5 one, but she had bipolar disorder with postpartum psychoses.
My opinion was that, and is, that she suffered from a major depressive episode, and that was a part of major depressive disorder.
Does your note say, and I quote, also discussed possibility of undiagnosed bipolar disorder given extreme reaction to SSRIs and insomnia, period. Does it say that?
Yes.
Did she have bipolar?
No.
Did you make that decision that night, that day?
I assessed that with her pretty much every time that I saw her, and she never had mania.
I'm reading the medical records here. Sleep, taking Ativan and Trazodone, slept 5 hours broken, wondering about increasing Trazodone and switching to Valium. So was the Trazodone increased at that point?
Yes.
How about on January 9th? Did you prescribe medication to her on that date?
Yes.
And was that diazepam?
Yes.
Do you recall on January 12th that, in fact, you prescribed Trazodone 150 milligrams, 30 count?
Yes.
January 16th, do you recall prescribing amitriptyline?
Yes.
And so were you recommending that she be on all of those at the same time? That she do the Remeron, the Seroquel, the Prozac?
Yes.
The suspicions of bipolar disorder from Dr. Gelada, and then talked about the prescriptions that were prescribed. Is it, in your opinion, appropriate to prescribe a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor to a person that is bipolar?
It would be considered something to be done cautiously.
Ms. Clancy told her that she heard a male voice instructing her to first kill her children and then to kill herself.
Did you see any signs of psychosis in any of your interactions with Lindsay Clancy?
No.
On December 6th, did she indicate to you whether she was experiencing any auditory or visual hallucinations?
No.
Did you observe any signs of psychosis?
No.
Psychosis, is that something that just grinds on for day after week after month, or is that something that comes on out of nowhere very quickly?
No, overall.
It can be quite episodic.
What does that mean?
It means that an episode can start and stop, and then an interval of time goes by. It could be days, weeks, or months, and then another episode occurs.
She said that it started really right after the telephone call at 5:34 with her husband, Patrick. And she said it was a man's voice. It was very clear. It was external. In other words, it came from outside of her head. That it was constant. So this phrase, "This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids and then kill yourself," was something that was repeated over and over and over and over again.
A lot of difficult to understand testimony. Joining me now is Dr. Sarah Orrick, a reproductive psychiatrist and therapist. Dr. Orrick, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, you understand all these terms that are being used. It got pretty technical, though. How confusing do you think this could be for the jury?
I think it was a battle of the experts, and really who could communicate to the lay public was actually, I think, who will ultimately win the jury over. And I do think that there was a lot of jargon used, and unfortunately, I didn't see anyone. I think Resnick was a little bit more clear in how he communicated and was an expert also in postpartum psychosis, which we didn't see from the other experts. But really, how to communicate and break down medical knowledge for the lay public is a hugely important part of this case.
As far as grading the experts for either the prosecution or the defense, do you see clearly one side that was stronger than the other?
I don't. And what I see, though, is that unfortunately there just weren't experts in postpartum psychosis, especially on the prosecution side. The defense had Resnick, who is an expert, who has been, part of the biggest trials in postpartum psychosis. But I just didn't see that expertise, unfortunately, amongst all of the experts, which I think speaks to women's health issues and the fact that there just isn't enough diagnosis, evidence, research, and people who are truly experts and see cases like this currently, not in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah, and speaking of Resnick, he worked on the Andrea Yates case, testifying in that back in 2001, something that this case has been compared to time and again. On the topic of medications, that was also spoken about a lot. Some of the psychologists were talking about medications. They're not medical doctors, but we heard the psychiatrist as well. How do you think that testimony landed?
I think it was just so many different medications. I think it speaks to more the fragmented mental health care system that we have, where Lindsay went to several providers, wasn't getting what she needed. There wasn't communication between providers. And ultimately, there was a lot of starting and stopping. And from Patrick's own testimony, he would retain the rest of the medication, and I think had a bag full in his car and in other places. And so I do think it's confusing, and I hope that there isn't stigma on some of these medications, which may not have been appropriate for Lindsay, but are appropriate for many patients in different circumstances.
An important point. And many people are talking about this case. It has really struck a chord with so many people. Do you think that could be helpful in getting the conversation about maternal mental health back in the spotlight?
I mean, that's the only silver lining I see in having this be so public, is that hopefully people will start to understand what postpartum psychosis is, that it is true psychiatric emergency, how it differs from postpartum depression and anxiety, but also how it differs from other types of psychoses. It should be its own entity in our DSM-5, which is our diagnostic manual, which it is not. And I think that's part of the issue with education. We see a lot of the treaters that saw Lindsay potentially potentially miss the diagnosis. And I think it has to do a lot with the lack of education and research in this particular area. I mean, that the prosecution couldn't find experts in postpartum psychosis tells you a lot.
And fascinating, and many people were surprised that it's not in the DSM-5. Dr. Sarah Orrick, thanks so much for your expertise. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, at the center of this trial is the disorder, as we were just talking about, of postpartum psychosis, so potentially severe that it is considered a medical emergency. And while there's generally more awareness for postpartum depression, which impacts about 1 in 8 women, according to the CDC, postpartum psychosis is much rarer, impacting about 1 or 2 women in every 1,000 births. So beyond the headlines of this trial, what exactly is it, and where should you turn if someone you know is struggling with it? Let's bring in Dr. Nicole Serino, the director of the Division of Reproductive Psychiatry at Baylor College of Medicine. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us tonight as well. So if you could talk us through postpartum psychosis and what the symptoms might look like and how soon it can show up after a woman gives birth.
Yeah, I mean, there are kind of the classic symptoms that I think people would expect to see that you've had up on the screen, you know, auditory or visual hallucinations or delusions. But we do find that for those that we are training in our clinic to recognize it, there are often more subtle signs that somebody may not just have postpartum depression or anxiety, but they may indeed have postpartum psychosis. And this may be why it is being missed by clinicians that are not in the clinic and seeing this regularly. I think some of the things that stand out to me are severe unrelenting anxiety, severe insomnia, and insomnia that is worse after an SSRI or antidepressant is initiated. We also see women sometimes describe that they're having intrusive thoughts of violence, and sometimes people take that for granted that they are indeed intrusive thoughts that are not, in fact, psychotic thoughts. And those intrusive thoughts and those complaints don't get adequately evaluated to differentiate between more of an obsessive compulsive symptom versus true psychosis.
In testimony, we heard that Lindsay was afraid of talking about these intrusive thoughts and thoughts of harming herself and harming her children. She's saying that she was afraid of having her children taken away. What happens when someone does report this? What is the first line of treatment?
So, you know, we usually, I just did this today, but reassure patients that, you know, we want you to tell us about these thoughts, that we can help you. This is treatable. We don't want to separate you from your baby. And we will use, you know, we will limit that to the last resort. But you can tell us about it, because not all thoughts of harming the baby or yourself lead to that outcome. So there are some that are benign, and then there's some that are more serious. So I think that is really true. But I think when you're in a reproductive psychiatry perinatal clinic regularly, you get really used to talking to women and having them trust you, that they can tell you these thoughts and that we're going to not overreact or underreact, but we're going to take them seriously. And we're going to talk about what the treatment plan is for them and how quickly we can get them better.
Trust of those providers is so important. And we were just hearing from Dr. Orrick, the DSM-5 doesn't recognize postpartum psychosis as a standalone diagnosis. Does that make it more difficult for people to get help?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of an expert consensus panel. We've been working with the DSM for some time, particularly the last 5 years, to try to get postpartum psychosis as a distinct diagnosis. We have expanded the timeline. We have described symptoms that are not typical for psychotic disorders in males that may present unique to women who have postpartum psychosis. And so we have been pushing hard, a number of organizations have, to get DSM to get postpartum psychosis into the DSM.
That will be something to definitely keep an eye on as well as this continues to unfold. What are the go-to resources you might suggest to someone who may be struggling with postpartum depression, or if they may think that they have postpartum psychosis?
Yeah, one of my roles is I'm the board chair of Postpartum Support International, which is an amazing international organization. All our resources are free, and they include peer support, group support, education, provider directory. They certify and have trained up to 100,000 clinicians in how to recognize and treat behavioral mood disorders. And they have a legal justice program as well.
Yeah, important work that you're doing. Dr. Serino, thanks so much for your time and in breaking that down for us. We certainly appreciate it. And again, if you or someone you know needs postpartum support, you can call the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline or visit their website, postpartum.net. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Stephen Romo. We'll see you tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.